Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're continuing on our pandemic projects, and today I selected a reel that I got as part of a group purchase. This is an older one. This is a Daiwa graphite. It's the AG2050. If I read the decal right, it's kind of one off. It's a rear drag reel, and this is probably as big as the rear drag reels are going to get. This holds 8, 10, and 12 pound test. And they don't get much bigger than this, but this one's just been kind of sitting in a box when I went to purchase a lot, and this one came along with it. So this reel was made in Thailand, and my guess is probably 1990s. Rear drag reel. We're going to take it apart. We'll show you how it's made, how to service one of these if you have it, and how to keep it tip-top and ready to go fishing again. So I start by taking off the exterior parts. This is a push-button spool, so I'm going to push down. And pull off, and you can see we've got some pretty old grease and some stuff in there. And this is probably why this reel has been performing. It's kind of sluggish. My guess is, as I look at the buildup on this reel here, this reel hasn't been serviced in quite some time. Probably just found itself in the bucket that way. But let's continue then. We're going to take the handle off, and while we do this, I want to take the opportunity to thank our frontline folks that are helping us fight the pandemic every day. That includes the law enforcement, EMTs, all the medical staffs, as well as teachers and essential personnel, both in government and private industry, that are making the trains and buses run, that have the responsibility for keeping our stores stocked, and for just generally making certain that we're staying healthy during this difficult time. So you just saw that I took some penetrating oil. There's a lot of dirt and things collected up top here. And when I pushed that button in before, it was a little tight. So I just want to make sure that we've got that cleaned off there. We're going to just set that to the back side. I took the spool off of the handle. That will enable us to pull the handle out. That handle should flex, but I'm noticing that there's a lot of built up rust and corrosion. I'm not sure that that's going to be able to move to that flex mode, but what I am going to do is just, again, flood that with some penetrating oil. We'll let it sit. It may or may not work, but we'll give it a try, see if we can restore that function. Okay, into the case then. Take that button and put that over in my parts tray. You'll also notice that I'm wearing a protective glove, and from time to time I try to keep this board clean, but that doesn't necessarily work. To get to that case then, I'm not sure if we need to remove the rear drag. Let's see. The rear drag was working when I tested it, so you don't necessarily need to service the rear drag if it's working. It's just a series of lock washers, but if you need to replace them, you certainly need to remove the cap and all. But we'll see. I don't know much about this reel. Like I said, I found it as part of a bigger lot of reels. We do want to make sure that our anti-reverse is off. That way when we disconnect our side plate here, we're not pulling anything out. And then we'll have a look underneath in terms of what this reel is made of and how to clean it up. Whoa, well there's why the reel is performing poorly. It's just got a lot of old grease from a long time ago, and that's our job today, is to clean it up and restore that function. So let's start by assuming that I've got to take the drag shaft out. I may or may not have to. Yep, I do have to take the spool shaft in order to get to the main gear out and get into that body to clean it up. So we start by removing the tie down screw, and I imagine that there's some kind of clip in here. It's hard to see. Yeah, there's a clip. That clip is a kind of a U-clip or a Y-clip, and it's kind of hiding in all of that grease there. And folks sometimes kid me about why do I wear this glove, but there's a good example of it. We just got a lot of old grease here. I grab the shaft and pull it up, and you can just see why this reel is underperforming when you pull that shaft up. Once you remove the shaft, you can remove the main gear. You can just see everything that was lubrication is just congealed over to the side. We'll take our crosswind block out. We'll take our crosswind gear out. And we'll do a series of cleanings, and then we'll just make sure that we reinstall. Now there is no nut up top holding the rotor on. That means that we have an assembly below that's actually holding that. And it's actually a U-clip, and depending on how lucky you get, it can come out easy or it can be stuck. In this case it came out easy, and I got lucky because that thing could have just taken off and kind of flown across the table here. Alright, I'm just getting rid of the dirt that was on there. And once you pull that clip, this whole assembly should just come right out. There we go. And you can see there's not much there, but we do want to make sure that we clean it. There's a brass bushing here. And then we just have what's acting as the pinion gear. That's part of the rotor. So, fairly significant design. We've seen it a lot over time, and you just want to, again, get the dirt and junk out of there. And if you notice that there's an accumulation of dried grease in that pinion gear, well then just take a pick, run it through the grooves, and make sure that you clear it all out. I keep a paper towel on my desk just so I can wipe that off before I kind of move over to the next channel there. And although it takes time, it will improve the performance, and you won't bog down, and you won't get any dirt or grease or grinding going on, because you've got some kind of a skip going on with the hardened grease. Then I'm going to take a bristle brush. You could use a toothbrush or even a light wire brass brush, just to get it all cleaned up. Alright, so to complete the servicing of this, then you just take fresh grease. I'm asked a lot what the grease is. I'm using Penn Precision reel grease here. Yeah, it's a Daiwa reel. You don't need Daiwa grease. You need fishing reel grease. Doesn't matter whose. And I just happen to have a container of the Penn's grease here. Alright, once you get all of that in, just want to check a couple of things. We've cleaned this, so let's put a little bit of oil on that little trip lever there. This is a dead end on the bail, so you don't need to do anything there, but I do like to put some oil onto the seam and onto the line roller, even though it's not a bearing, and just work it in to make sure that everything's functioning nicely. And now we can reinstall this after we clean the case. So I'm just going to lay that over to the side. I've got a main gear here that's full of old grease, so let's go ahead and get that done. I'm going to take a cotton swab, just run it on the inside channel. And it's kind of interesting, when you see this grease in a yellow format, it usually means that there's been some kind of either water intrusion or it's not the right grease. It could be that somebody used lithium grease, which happens to be kind of a white coloring. It's possible that that was used in here. I'm not sure. All I can say is it's been a while since this reel has been serviced, and we're going to do it right. All right, now I'm going to grab that brush again. I'm going to make sure that I get all of that stuff out of the channel here. While I'm doing that, I'm checking the teeth to make sure that the teeth are all uniform, not worn, and that all of the grooves in there are clear, and they are. I also want to check the back gear that's driving our crosswind gear, and I want to do the same thing here. I want to just make sure that we're clean, which we are, and then we'll come around the front, which also has the old grease just kind of piled up in there. I'll get that off. I'm not quite sure what we got here. Yeah, we got a couple of ages of grease here. I'll just get that out of the way. So a lot of what the annual services are is basically just cleaning your reel, getting the old grease out, and just making sure that no broken parts or pieces are in there. And the other part of it is take the line off. I know that we all like to be frugal at times, but old line, it just leads to breakdowns when you can least afford them, which is usually when you have a nice fighting fish on there. So get rid of the old line. Line is relatively inexpensive. And if you're going to go through the effort of maintaining the reel, that's part of the maintenance. All right, this is the front of this gear here is the anti-reverse. So just make sure that you have all of your grease out of there as well. And then we can just go about one more thing, which is cleaning off the excess grease that's in the case here. And we'll do the same thing. I got a fresh can of penetrating oil, wants to shoot at me. Another reason why that glove is there. But all of this should clean up nicely. Just takes a little patience and a little bit of effort. You'll be happy you did it. I just had a pen reel come in. Spin Fisher 5 that was completely filled up and fouled with old grease. I don't know. I'm going to guess that somebody probably took the time to put new grease in but never took the time to take the old grease out. It was just layered, and it had a detrimental effect. It started collecting dirt and debris, and the next thing you know, the gears were wearing, and you had a lot of metal filings and the like in there because the grease was just holding the old sands and other things that got in the way. All right, that's a pretty good job of cleaning it up. Let's see what I can do here just to get one little piece out of here. I'm looking at my rag. Chris tells me that I get more use out of a paper towel than he does. He's probably right. All right, so we've got the case cleaned. And if you like, not necessary, but we'll take this cap off and we'll show you how the drags line up underneath here. You should be able to remove the screw from the bottom. And then once you have the screw off, you should be able to just pull the assembly off. And this is a spring. If you do attempt this, please remember it's a spring and it will shoot. You want to get the two sides out. Then you can push this little V through. Then you can pull your drag. Okay, so you want to unscrew your cap. That was what the hum was about. And then you have your drag stack. You have a series of washers. These are pretty big washers. Now you can push your drag rotor out. There we go. Yeah, so we got rotor. This is your top side. Has a little sealer. That's your acceptor for the piece. Then you have a almost a 60 size type of a washer, and only one washer, which is kind of surprising for the amount of drag that it's going to need to handle a 8, 10, or 12 pound fish, but I'm sure it's fine. And so I have it out. Let's just clean that shaft off. The washer's fine. It's a hard washer, so you don't need to do anything with that. Then we can reinstall this simply by taking this, seating it into your drag stack, pushing up to make sure that it's flush. We have an eared washer here, so find the channels for that, just like that. Okay, after you install the eared washer, there's a spring. And then this cap here has a little washer in it. Just make sure that you're aware of that. That's going to provide the slip over the spring. And we can just go ahead and tighten that down. This screws on, remember, screwed off. And you want to tighten that down as much as you can to get clearance for that click spring. To load the click spring, then find the single hole, and then you can just kind of slip it in and over. And it winds up like that. Just make sure that that it's seated properly. You can go ahead and grab your cap, screw, and I'm going to try and remember as I go to put this back together to tighten everything down here. Usually I don't. I'll see what I can do here. Sometimes you need the rod in to get that last piece tightened there. I think we pretty much have that. All right, we have a dirty axle shaft, so let's go clean that off. As I said, that's kind of a dipstick there in terms of telling how your engine performance was. It was pretty much junked up there, and I think that's probably why the spool was tough to get off as well. I'm noticing that there's some junk, so I'm going to take some steel wool, see if I can't polish that a little bit. Yeah, that helps. Same thing here. Doesn't take much. A little bit extra. The shaft seems fine, otherwise it doesn't seem like it's bent or anything. Alright, so there's your shaft. So we have a bushing up top, and we have plastic cases that becomes the bushings for the side. Plastic on that side, metal on this side. Interesting, it's a graphite wheel, but there's no nothing of any consequence here in terms of a bushing or a bearing. You want to get some oil onto the anti-reverse dog. Make sure we have it in the off position, but just move it. Make sure that it's working properly. This one's got a little bit of a kind of a boot spring that goes there. It pushes it back and forth. I hate those things. They wear all the time. All right, let's go ahead and put the rotor back on. Just like that. Grab the little U-clip that goes in next. Needs to be seated. It's held down by the side plate when it works, and then just kind of give it a little spin. Make sure that we're doing well there. We are. Let's grab that crosswind block then. And grease that up. The crosswind block gets grease everywhere. It gets it on the back, gets it on the teeth. Talk about working overtime. This one's got a couple of different ways that it merges here. Alright, make sure you put the stud down when you do the crosswind block. Makes it easier to get the rest of it in when you go to put the clip on for your axle shaft. Here's your grease on the back. Then that's going to drive the crosswind block. Grease on your main gear. And you don't need grease where that anti-reverse lockout is going to be, but you should use grease where you're going to insert it into that cavity that's acting as a bushing. All right, main gear goes on. Let's see if we can get that crosswind block cleaned up. I'm guessing I probably should have put this crosswind gear in block in first. I'm noticing there's a tag here. Let's just pull that gear out for a moment. No harm, no foul. All right, have our crosswind block. Let's get some grease, especially into the channel and on that little slide bar there. And we can seat that in. Turn back and put that main gear back in. And you should pay attention to how you took these out. If you have any question, you probably should take pictures. I recommend that all the time. Take pictures along the way. That way, if you do get confused or lost and you don't have a schematic, and we're not working off a schematic here, but if you don't have that schematic, it'll kind of guide you. All right, we're coming through the top now with our axle shaft. Now there's 2 slots on that axle shaft. You need to find them because that's how your tie down is going to go. Find the 2 Y-shaped pieces. Then I use a little pick to align the hole for the tie down screw. It's kind of how we started, right? We took that screw out, so we must be getting close to finishing here. But it looks a whole lot differently. It's nice and cleaned up, and that's a good thing. Cleaned and lubed. In this case, remember, this is just a, it's acting as a bushing, but it's just the molding in the case. You can put a little bit more grease in there. Bring that around to this side. We have 3 side plate screws that go on next. So my guess on this one is 1980s, possibly 1990s. Still using a metal drive side case. It's not completely graphite. It is called the graphite reel. Metal case, the rest of it seems to be graphite. Graphite's introduction was in the late 80s and became prominent in the 90s. So my guess is this is somewhere in there, probably as a transition reel. And again, it's kind of unusual because of the bigger size of the washer and bigger size of the reel going for an 8, 10, or 12 pound fish. So, all right. That belongs here. Once you finish tightening up the side plate screws, let's go ahead and install the handle. And I'm just noticing in my case here that the screw cap is broken off. So I guess for the purposes of finishing this demonstration, we're just going to use the screw. If it was my customer's reel, I would be going out and searching for a cap to keep it a little bit drier. This is my reel, as I mentioned early on. This one just came in with the with a lot of reels that I purchased, and just wanted to use this to show you how to service this. So this fortunately has a screw with a slot on it. Give it a quick ride. Oh, it's riding nice. All right, let's put that anti-reverse back on. Yep, we have the anti-reverse functioning. Let's put our spool back on. Just let that sticky button going on there. There we go. All right, and let's tighten down the drag. Yep, we have our drag. All right, so there you go. That's the Daiwa AG2050 rear drag reel for 8, 10, 12 pound fish. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please indicate it by liking it on the video itself. If you want to see more of these, please subscribe. And if you want to see all of the ones that I do, which is almost daily, please activate notifications so that you don't miss any of them. Finally, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If I can answer your question, whether it's on this reel or any reel in particular, I'll try to help you out there. And if you have a reel that needs some service, but you're not interested in doing it yourself, I do repair reels by mail. So if you would like to contact me with that, I'll give you the information. Use the email on the business card that follows. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.